Good day, good day. Today we're going to cover the some of the aspects of owning an assisted living and some of the things we're going to be covering in our 5-week crash course. So own the property, build the legacy. Owning a piece of real estate is already an awesome thing, right? But to not only live in it or rent it out to a family, or getting market rent, or maybe even putting it on Section 8. That's okay, right? That's okay. That's a good business, and a lot of people use that model. Um, you put a tenant in there, you do a cash out refi, then you go buy another property, you put another market tenant in there, and your next property, and so on and so forth. But what we're going to talk about here today is another model that's not talked about as much, I think, in our community, or just in the business community in general. Um, Being as though how big the opportunity is. So we're going to talk a little bit about residential assisted living. Launching your private pay assisted living facility. Real estate is the foundation of wealth. Assisted living is its heart. So so um as you might have seen and heard, there's a huge opportunity based on just the demographics, the market demand, and then the investment potential. So, I mean, when you talk about the demographics, again, um, America is becoming one of the oldest populations in the world, with 10,000 people turning 65 daily. And these people will, within 3 or 4 years, they will be needing some level of care. A lot of families choose home care, and other families that just can't do it may not have the the space, or their family members aren't able to stay alone anymore. So they don't have a family member to help. They opt for assisted living. And with the current um the current financial and economic uh strains that a lot of these families are dealing with, what they call the sandwich generation, where they're taking care of they're taking care of their parents, and they're raising the kids. That leaves the middle class mainly dealing with the with the problem. So a lot of times they can't move their family, their loved one, maybe their parent, in-laws, into their own homes, and they can no longer live by themselves. So what happens is they end up putting them in assisted living. Usually something that usually happens, maybe a fall, or they've been missing their medications, or they've been wandering and leaving out the house, or getting lost, or getting in the car and driving and forgetting where they are. So there's a whole host of reasons when families start looking at you and start looking for these different opportunities for these families to move to a facilities. Most families, from my experience, would rather a more home style feel, um instead of like the big corporate, multi bed facilities where you're talking about 30, 40, 50 residents, 100 residents. Most families prefer something a little smaller, where they feel like their family's going to be get more attention. When you're talking about a 3-to-1 ratio for caregiver to resident, or 4-to-1 at the most. So people are really more excited to live in these smaller facilities, and that's kind of what increases the demand for what we when we talk about residential assisted living, not the commercial, but the residential assisted livings with the 4, 5, 6, 8 bed facilities. So, and then the investment potential. Once you invest in this stuff, if you already own a home, or you thinking about planning on buying a home, or you want to convert, say, like your grandparents or your parents' home, who are eventually getting older. I've seen a lot of that as well, where I see families who begin to and it even happened to my family, a couple of my family members, where I watched my cousins and even my uncle inherit a piece of property. And it's like from my cousin's perspective, she lost her mom's property. You know what I mean? Because she didn't really understand the just because it was paid off. I think it was some like second mortgages and stuff. She didn't understand the financial burden of what it took to keep that property. And if she would have been able to convert it into a residential assisted living, not only because she had took care of her mother, in a more structured and caring way, but a professional assisted living facility, she would have been able to keep the property, and the property would still be the family's, in the family's name, and we would still own it because it would have been an actual functioning business. So, um, you can look at this stuff from a lot of different ways, and you'll see that, there's really not a better way to you know, maximize the value of a single family resident, you know, a single family home than residential assisted living. And like we got here, we got the residential assisted livings from like 4 to 16 beds, home-like settings. Then you got the commercials, like I was saying, the bigger facilities with families. This would be the goal, for a lot of investors. Even I think in these terms, at some point, I want to get to the commercial level. I'm not in a rush because I feel like there's a bigger opportunity in the more 4 to 16 bed, because like again, families want to go to those smaller facilities where there's a lower ratio of caregivers to residents. And then memory care units is another specialized care for dementia patients. It's like a higher, it's like a value add, like a really higher value add to your residential assisted living. So if you add these memory care units, or you convert your residential assisted living to a memory care facility, you can get, $1,500 to $2,000 more, just because you have that memory care um aspect on your residential assisted living. And that just adds more, gives you more value per bed because you can actually take, full on dementia patients, and you can take them as well with a regular assisted living. But some families, if you have memory care, there's more specialized training, there's more security, it's a more secure facility, and there's more specialized training that has to go into that. So the family, the residents of memory care are getting more trained. They're getting more, um, they're getting more specialized care for their specific ailment, which is dementia. So definitely want to think about that as well. We'll be covering that as well. Um, when it comes to licensing and regulatory requirements, every state is different. It varies by location, and we're going to be researching local laws. Whatever a locale you're in, we'll be pulling that up and looking at the different things. We'll go over your license and what are the actual requirements. What do you need for your policies? Uh, when it comes to compliance, health and safety standards, and staff qualifications, there are quite a bit of qualifications, especially for the manager and the alternative manager. They both have to have everything up to date. All of their trainers have to be up to date, background checks. And there's quite a bit of training that they do have to take. Dementia trainers, as we were talking before, even if it's not going to be a memory care facility, you still have to have a certain level of trainings as it concerns dementia, food and safety, fire, um, and all just a whole host of different standards and qualifications and trainings that you have to go through. So we have to definitely cover. We're going to definitely cover that as well. Regular evaluations to maintain a license. Just be keeping all your policies and fire safety and evacuation, tornado, storm safety um, policies and preparedness up to date is very important. Um, when it comes to choosing the location, there's a couple of things you want to think about. What I like to think about when I'm looking at a location, I like to think about obviously proximity to hospitals, community community centers, adult daycare centers, free stuff, free programs and stuff like that where the seniors can go, or the community wouldn't mind sending somebody over to your facility. The YMCA, parks. like general, like community parks, like state ran parks or community ran parks, um, and stuff like that. Because not only do you just, the health is important, obviously, the hospitals and things like that, but then also like what are some of the things that the community can offer the seniors as well, not just, for health and safety, but also entertainment, engagement and stuff like that, and community. So obviously you got to, you want to pay attention to your zoning laws when you even if you're looking for a property to lease or purchase, you want to make sure that you're checking and you have your agent checking and seeing exactly what the zoning laws are. I've gotten lucky most times where, every property that we've been involved with, there's been no zoning issues. Even one of the properties that I own, I'm able to put a 10 unit facility. So we're looking to expand just because of the zoning capabilities. And then, the property features. What are some of the things that you want to look for when you're going to buy a property? I like to look for stuff that has majority of the bedrooms on the first floor, so they don't have to navigate steps if they don't have to. And if there is a basement, that's always a plus for, for caregivers, living quarters, and even like up if there is upstairs, how are the stairs designed? Can it will be easy for a chairlift to be installed, stuff like that. So these are some of the things that we're going to cover when it comes to site selection and zoning, and what type of things you need for you want to look for when you're selecting your property. Um, and then the design, like I was saying, you want to make sure that the design open floor plan, which most people are moving towards and have been moving towards the open floor plan for the last few years, like last couple decades, actually. Everybody's been interested in less walls, open floor plans, stuff like that. So that's always important to think about. And then when you talk about, you can have private rooms and then shared rooms and then community areas, living areas, activity areas, and dining room can turn into an activity area. Living room can turn into an activity area. You bring in chairs, bring in like a folding table, put some activities on it. So you don't have to think like, okay, I need a separate area for my community or activities. No, you could just convert a different area for the day or for the time of day. And you guys be doing activities in the same some of the same rooms. But you know, with a four bedroom, you can have two shared rooms. That's four residents and two private rooms, and then you got six beds. So that's like the ideal structure that I like right at this moment. No, a minimum of six beds. Safety features, obviously, you're gonna have to get handrails, non-slip flooring, and emergency systems. And this just depends on the size. You might not need in a lot of counties. You don't need fire extinguishers, fire sprinklers. You're gonna need fire extinguishers everywhere, but not fire sprinklers. Handrails in the bathroom mainly. There have to be grab bars in the showers and around the toilets areas and stuff like that. And if there's long hallways, you might want to think about putting a rail if there's like a long hallway, so they can hold on as they walk past walk down the longer hallways. And then also, you know, just doing your proper measurements is just keeping in mind wheelchair accessibility and stuff like that. A lot of licenses don't require ramps. A lot of times they don't require ramps, but you want to make sure that if they're, if you plan on obviously taking clients with wheelchairs, you can at least get a portable ramp. If you're not going to build a whole new ramp onto your property, there's always portable options. Um, And then, obviously dining and like we said, recreational stuff. You want to have a place outside. They kind of require you to have some type of space outside where you could put like lawn chairs and like a outside area for the residents to kind of congregate when the weather is nice and stuff like that. They require that for you to have a nice area, whether on the side of the house, front of the house, backyard, whatever, and it has to have like a clear path where they can get to it, not a whole bunch of steps and hills and stuff like that. And then, like I said, that could be the front yard, the front porch even. So, so we did some things we're going to be discussing. Staffing your facility. Administrators, facility, your that's basically the facility leadership is the administrator, depending on the size. You only need one administrator, and then an alternate manager. So these are people who most states they're required to have some level of training. In Maryland they require 80-hour training for your manager and your alternate manager. The alternate manager is the person that's, if you're not available, if you're for for some odd reason you're not available, the facility can still, the people, the families, the nurses, the staff can always support your can contact the alternate manager for the thing if you're just not available for a specific amount of time. So all facilities are required that. And if you're in a state where they don't require it, I would still find someone to have that as that backup to kind of support you in your facility, and you could do the same thing for them, vice versa. If you guys both had the same training. So then also the direct care comes from nurses and caregivers. Majority of the time, the nurses are just putting together care plans. They're doing resident evaluations before they come. So like you want to definitely make sure you get the nurse to do a thorough evaluation of their doctor's records, their medical records, and what the doctor's recommendations are, and then what the nurse's care plan is going to be, because you don't want to take everybody. You want to pick and choose. Like, okay, do I want this resident with these type of issues, or are we taking, based on our facilities culture and what we're looking to do and the type of residents we want to have, is this a fit or it's not? And you won't know that unless you have a nurse go in and check and look at their records and consult with the doctor and stuff like that. That's the nurse's job before you intake that resident. And then once they're there, obviously the care plan is put together, and that's where the caregivers and the direct care comes into place through the caregivers, because they're actually one implementing the care plan on a day-to-day basis. And when you see support staff, housekeeping, dining, maintenance, I would like get a local handyman, to kind of get like on deposit, so we can constantly call them if things, because things go wrong in all houses. If you ever owned a home or been around somebody who owned homes, constantly need updates and little things here, doorknobs, tightening, little electrical things. And, it's good to have a handyman, but it's also good to have actual companies, like a solid company for electric, a solid company for HVAC, um, a solid company for plumbing that you can call on a drop of a dime. So it's always good to like put like a retainer down, like maybe 250 or 500 with these different um agencies or these different contractors, contractors, so you can, get, so you kind of be on call and you won't get like that emergency fee. Like they always like to charge an emergency fee when you call them out the blue, like, hey, like my toilet stopped. Well, we can put you on the calendar, or we can call it an emergency. And then if they call it an emergency, they're gonna add another, a big amount to the bill. So if you get them on retainer, they won't, and kind of negotiate that emergency thing off, where you put down a certain amount of money up front, and then you just call them when you need them. So, and the housekeeping and dining, depending on the size of your facility, the caregivers are going to be taking care of that. So it's not nothing there's no reason to hire like outside housekeepers or chefs or anything like that, because your caregiver should be able to cook, especially in the smaller facilities. Daily operation management. So the we're going to cover the residence care plan, personalized services and routines. This is stuff is being implemented by the caregivers. So medication management is, and then another training that most states require is medical technicians. I mean, medication technicians. So there's med techs, it's short for med tech. So the caregivers have to be certified medical med techs, so they could actually properly pass meds. That's an actual certification that they need to have as well. Activity program and engaging residents daily. So whether that's trips, to different locations, mall walks, the YMCA for like, different things that they have there, whether it be pool therapy, different group therapies, or just walking around the track, something like that. Um, that's important. That's something you want to think about. And then the things that you can do around the home. everything doesn't have to be outside or in the community. You could do a lot of activities at home, from painting to knitting to board games, Connect Four, the list goes on and on. Sewing, and there's no limitation on the opportunity of activities that you can have going on at the property. Game night, movie night, instrument night, whatever. So, and then also another thing that I feel like is very important is just family communication, keeping an update with the families. Families want to hear those follow-ups. Don't let, maybe every week or every 2 weeks, whatever type of schedule you want to create, where you're giving a family just a call. Hey, just giving you an update, such and such doing well, or this is some of the incidents that happened, or just some of the good things we've been able to do this week. Because you don't always just want to wait till something bad happens. You want to constantly give good updates as well. Because this just goes back to quality assurance, and eventually these families become referral sources as well. So, okay, what's going on? So, the majority of the cost is going to be property acquisition, obviously renovation. A lot of states got low license, like Maryland doesn't have any licensing costs, but obviously you might, if you need consulting, you might need to pay a consultant to do like certain things to get your license. But um, the majority of the cost, the upfront cost, is going to be property acquisition, buying the actual property if you don't already own one. The renovations don't won't be that much usually if you're doing, like I said, 4 to 6 residents at the beginning. If you get higher than that, then obviously you might have to do some more renovations and stuff like that. But usually just grab bars. Um, if there's a sprinkler system requirement or a chairlift requirement, you have to deal with that. But then after that, and then after, obviously the furnishings. If you shop wisely and look online, and believe it or not, Walmart delivers furniture now. I don't know, they probably always did. I just realized it, but they have pretty low cost furnishings. They can furnish your property pretty on a really good budget as far as the things that the property needs, as far as furnishings for the living spaces and then the rooms and what each resident's requirement is, like a bed, nightstand, lamp, mirror, dresser, um, and a chair. So that's what each resident is required by the state. And then next after that is your operational costs, is your salaries, utilities, and supplies. Your salaries is going to be the next big expense after your house bills, after your mortgage, even probably more than your mortgage and your house bills. Your salaries are going to be the biggest nut that you're going to have to cover. But this comes as you acquire residence. So this is not something that you're going to be having to deal with until you actually get residence. So don't expect to have like this bloated payroll before you get any client. I mean, before you get any residents moved in. The residents, the salary increases as you have people to care for. You don't need to pay anybody prior to that. So you can use that money to pay for pay your salaries. You will have upfront costs when it comes to nurses. They're going to help you with certain things. They might charge you things here and there before you get a resident for like paperwork or documentation that they help you with. Or if you pay, like I said, you pay a consultant, you pay us to help you. There's fees there. Um, Nurses want to, they're definitely going to charge you to go do assessments. And if you don't get those residents, so then that does come out of pocket. But that's usually, 175 to $200, 250 at the most that I would pay a nurse to go do an assessment of a potential resident. So, and then you think about utilities, that's going to be sort of a fixed cost once you figure out exactly what, once you have a full house or, 85 to 90% um occupancy, you'll know exactly what your utilities are going to be based on like electric, water, and stuff like that. You get the basic cable plans and internet and stuff like that, so you know all the streaming and your ring cameras and everything that's going to stay the same no matter how many residents you have. um Supplies is tricky and groceries are tricky, so you just want to really, once you get a good menu, we offer menus and we help you with the menus. Once you get a good menu, you figure out the budget for that. And then supplies, you just want to make sure that your caregivers, I'm gonna touch on this quickly, we gotta move on. Touch on supplies. You want to make because supplies can really get tricky because say like dishwashing liquid or laundry detergent. Like that could really become a really big bill because people just not using the required amount. So you really have to be a stickler when it comes to like stuff like that because people will overdo it, like caregivers overdo it because it's not really their stuff and they're not thinking about it. They're probably using like how to use it at home when this stuff has to really be, portioned out in a really, really smart way because these are like added costs that would like come out of nowhere, and you'd be like, where did this, $300-400 we lost $300-400 every month or something, and kind of find out it's on dishwasher liquid and laundry detergent and bleach and stuff like that, or cleaning supplies because people are overusing it, and you're not buying concentrates and you're not doing, so there's different things that you need to be thinking about. So then again, there's also other options for different revenue streams that we're gonna cover as well. So branding, trustworthy and compassionate image, community outreach, marketing, community engagement. The most important thing at this point in the very beginning stages is just community outreach. Obviously, you want to have a good website, social media, virtual tours. But the most important thing is to get in the community and raise the awareness for your coming facility. Even before you come, you can start. You can't market and tell people that you're a business, but you can start making connections. Nobody's stopping you from communicating with other people and telling them what you have, what you're working towards, and some things that you're going to be offering. So community outreach is important, but obviously branding and online presence and other things and working with placement agencies are important as well. But these are just, outreach is just very important. When it comes to your legal considerations, your LLC, corporation partnerships, especially if you're doing partnerships, I definitely consider I would definitely recommend bringing a lawyer in so everybody's getting on everybody's in writing, their roles, their responsibilities, their equity, and their position in the company. Don't do no homie, handshakes and, just going off nobody's word, no matter if it's your mother, your best friend, I won't go as far as wife, but you definitely want to have, a structured contract in place with everything you're doing. And then obviously your resident contracts, employee contracts, and all that stuff as well. That's not as I would you might not need you shouldn't need a lawyer for those. But and then you also want to think about insurance. You definitely want to be insured. So we can help you with all three of these different aspects. But yeah, we're gonna be covering this as well. Technology integration. There's a lot of different softwares out there. I would try to find something, inexpensive or even free. And we have different free stuff that we use when it comes to like resident management and scheduling. Um, some really inexpensive tools out there. You don't need, like again, if you're not a big facility, you don't need to get with the big software programs. You could just use something, either really light or free. Security and surveillance access, obviously that's, we're gonna use Ring and things like that stuff. That stuff has really been inexpensive lately. And when it comes to telehealth and health and emergency responses, there's a lot of new senior tools. A lot of doctors will do telehealth nowadays for your residents with your residents. So they'll be calling on video. They'll be doing video calls, so you don't have to, drag the resident to a doctor's office just to, for a checkup. The doctor do a lot of stuff online, and your caregivers and nurse can do blood pressure and stuff like that, and weight and things like that. You want to have a scale, obviously, so a lot of information can be done from home, and with technology, that's the telehealth advantage. And then again, we talked a little bit about quality assurance, feedback mechanism, surveys, suggestion boxes, for basically, family members and, residents. Most residents could talk pretty good and they could tell you what they want and what they feel. You ask you've asked the hard questions. What are we doing wrong? What could we do better? Things like that. Think these things will help you with occupancy rates, resident satisfaction, obviously. And then, like I said, continuous improvement with regular training and policy updates. Like we just got a big policy update here in Maryland when it comes to the state. So we got to stay on top of that stuff to make sure that you're in compliance and constantly improving. And real quick, we'll talk about exit strategies and scalability. So a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurship and business ownership. A lot of people build businesses to sell them. So, and that's not a bad thing. You build your 6 unit, you build your 6 resident or 8 resident or 10 resident facility up, and it's a really strong brand and it's really high occupancy rate. Um, and the budget is real good and you have really good income coming in. You can always think about selling. You could probably sell a property that would normally go just the same property, just as a single family home, could probably go for 100 to 200 to 300% more because you turn it into assisted living. So if you have a property that say maybe is valued at 300,000, you could probably sell it for over 1 million just because of the business you put in it. So if you ever want to cash out or, get some type of loan against it or, to build or grow or add additional facilities or, get a separate another facility or, even expand if you have the zoning to expand on that actual facility. These are some of the options you could do. Franchise, get another one, work with other partners. And then diversification into like, obviously what we're talking about in this 5-week crash course is doing other type of businesses, home care, um, adult daycare, adding placement agency and then consulting, some of those things like that. So it opens up a lot of opportunities when it comes to either scaling or expanding or diversification because there's a lot of income coming in and you can use that income to like grow your business and or show good track records for loans and investors and people who want to help in your expansion. So it's a really good model for that. And then say, for example, here's a quick case study for a 6 resident assisted living facility is say 4,500 a month, which is pretty conservative in most markets. That's monthly income of 27,000 at 6 residents per bed. The monthly expenses say, roughly 16,000. Then we're looking at a monthly profit of 11K and a yearly annual profit of 132. And this is a 6 bed, 4 bedroom property. 6 bed, 6 resident, 4 bedroom home. It's in your average community could be doing these kind of numbers. And it's not far-fetched. It may seem like it, but it's not far-fetched. Most families pay more than 4,500 for home care. Um, so if they can, sell mom and dad property, put them in assisted living, your assisted living, and they can, be comfortable, safe, and sound, get 24-hour medical care, it's a win-win for everybody. Because you're gonna pay if you keep them at home, you're gonna still have to pay their mortgage. They're gonna still have to pay, home care. They're gonna still have to pay the electric. See, all of that's bundled up when you come to the assisted living. All that's paid for you. You get all the cable and TV you want, all the electric you want, all the water you want, and then you got medical staff taking care of your loved ones. So it's a very profitable business plan. So business model, and it's really um doable for most families that work their whole lives. The baby boomer generation, they work their whole lives. They got long-term care insurance. They got lots of savings. They sell their house. They have maybe their husband or wife passed, and they got a large insurance policy that they got eventually, or they've inherited money from their loved ones. There's a lot of families that can afford this stuff, and don't be surprised. So, and these are the numbers. These are the conservative numbers. And in most communities, especially in Maryland, these are numbers you're getting for a 6 bed. Some of the pitfalls in the early stages is what we do want to make sure we underscore is underestimating costs, the importance of a detailed budget at the beginning. We definitely want to discuss that. Some things that you can overlook and not think about, especially when it comes to staffing, because that's gonna be your number one expense. Number one expense, even over like mortgage and everything. The number one expense is gonna be staffing. So we gotta figure out how to detail that, break it down, and get the biggest bang for your buck. Um, and then, obviously getting set up, getting licensed, and then neglecting your compliance. That's a huge thing. You don't want to put all this money into it and lose your license, right? And then obviously poor marketing. You don't want to not. engage the community. You don't want to skip this step. So these are some of the things that I feel are the most important pitfalls. And we'll cover some more as well. But these are some things that I want to touch on. There's some great resources. The ALFA and AAP, consultants, not just me, it's other people out there as well. Then obviously there's a lot of online communities, forums, webinars, and courses that you could take. Don't hesitate to get in the community, get into different community events where there's other operators, other owners, um, other people that engage this community, the senior community. Get out there, start networking and meeting people, get your face out there. People want to do business with the people they know. This is a very personal business. So the more people you know, the more referrals you get, the more opportunities you'll get, the more information you'll get. I don't know everything. So you have to get out there and meet new people. You can't just use one person or one network or one resource to, cover all your bases. You want to really diversify your network so you can have a lot of different perspectives, and that just makes you a stronger entrepreneur and a stronger operator. So this is a plan. This is an action plan for week 3. This is the actual week 3 program that we're going to be doing in our crash course. Research local listing requirements is zoning. This is something I would just, something I would suggest for your first week. Just when you begin, if you just starting the first day, first week, what do I do? Research your local license requirement and zoning network. Start connecting with existing facility owners, like find out where they're meeting different opportunities for um networking. Where as far there's always something going on in the community, so you just have to kind of look in Google, search where there's activities for assisted living owners and community events for seniors and stuff like that, and then start working on your business plan. So your business plan and your budget. So those are the 3 things I would suggest. First week, first day that you hear this stuff and you're starting to get, a little bit interested in it, start there. And there's a great podcast other than mine. You can find mine on AllenChaneydom, but there's another podcast. There's the Senior Housing Investors Podcast. Great podcast for just a lot of different um operators come onto this podcast and talk about their strategies and their some of the things that they've experienced and how they got into the business. And you guys know how podcasts work. So this is a great podcast. Check it out. It's called the Senior Housing Investment Podcast. And that's it. And if there's any more interest in this stuff, just reach out to me. And if you're interested in getting into the 5-week crash course, just let me know. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.